Looks like I just found something interesting.
That's not mine. I've never seen that before.
Found it under your seat. You want to explain that?
You went into my car without permission.
You people always say the same thing when you get caught.
I didn't have anything in my car.
The arrest report said the drugs were found during a lawful traffic stop, but the body camera footage told a different story. On a late evening in Tacoma, Washington, Officer Grant Whitaker stopped a black driver named Darius Holloway and accused him of carrying narcotics. What happened in the next few minutes would later trigger an internal investigation that Whitaker never saw coming. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you were watching from, and make sure to subscribe because the next story is one you don't want to miss. Officer Grant Whitaker was 41 years old and had spent 14 years working patrol for the Tacoma Police Department. Among some officers in the department, Whitaker had a reputation for being overly aggressive during routine stops. Several complaints had been filed over the years, accusing him of harassment and unnecessary force, particularly during traffic stops involving black drivers. None of those complaints had led to serious discipline, and Whitaker continued working patrol on the night shift along the busy commercial corridors of Tacoma. The driver he had just pulled over was 34-year-old Darius Holloway. Darius owned a small logistics company that coordinated freight deliveries for businesses around Tacoma and neighboring cities. After years of working warehouse jobs and driving trucks himself, he had slowly built the company from the ground up. His reputation among clients was simple, reliable, calm under pressure, and professional. That evening, he had just finished paperwork at a warehouse facility near Tacoma's industrial district. Like most nights, he stayed late making sure the next morning's shipments were scheduled correctly. Now he was heading home. Darius drove a dark gray Toyota Camry, the same car he used for most business errands. As he turned onto South Tacoma Way, the road was quiet except for a few passing cars and the glow of streetlights reflecting off closed storefront windows. Then, red and blue lights suddenly appeared in his rearview mirror. Darius frowned. A Tacoma police cruiser was approaching quickly behind him. "All right," he muttered quietly. He checked his speed on the dashboard. 40 miles per hour, exactly the posted limit. Still, he signaled and pulled over carefully along the curb. Darius had dealt with police stops before. He knew the safest thing to do was stay calm. He placed both hands on the steering wheel where they were clearly visible and rolled the window halfway down. The cruiser stopped abruptly behind him. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. Officer Grant Whitaker stepped out. Whitaker walked toward the Camry with stiff, deliberate steps. His right hand rested close to his holster as he approached the driver's side window. Before Darius could say a word, Whitaker slammed his palm loudly against the roof of the car. The sharp bang echoed across the quiet street. "Turn the engine off," Whitaker barked. Darius blinked in surprise. "It's already off, officer," he replied calmly. Whitaker leaned down toward the window and immediately shined a flashlight directly into Darius's face. "License and registration." Darius nodded slowly. "My wallet is in my pocket, and the registration is in the glove compartment." Whitaker's tone hardened. "Move slow." Darius carefully reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet before handing over his driver's license. Then he opened the glove compartment and retrieved the registration. Whitaker glanced down at the license. "Darius Holloway," he read aloud. His eyes narrowed slightly before he looked back into the car. "What's the rush tonight?" Whitaker asked. "No rush," Darius answered. Whitaker tilted his head. "You were drifting between lanes back there." Darius shook his head. "I wasn't drifting." Whitaker shrugged. "That's not what I saw." Darius kept his voice steady. "I stayed in my lane." Whitaker ignored the explanation and swept the flashlight across the inside of the vehicle. The beam moved slowly across the passenger seat, the center console, and the back seat. "What are you doing out here tonight?" Whitaker asked. "Coming from work." "What kind of work?" "I run a logistics company." Whitaker let out a short, skeptical chuckle. "Uh-huh." The flashlight beam continued moving around the car. "You got anything illegal in the vehicle?" "No." "Drugs?" "No." "Weapons?" "No." Whitaker straightened slightly and looked directly at him. You mind if I take a look inside? Darius shook his head. I don't consent to searches. The change in Whitaker's expression was immediate. His jaw tightened. Step out of the car. Darius paused. Officer, is there a reason you want me to step out? Whitaker suddenly opened the door himself. I said, step out. Darius slowly unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the car. The moment he stood upright, Whitaker grabbed his arm and shoved him against the side of the Camry. Hands on the car, Whitaker shouted. Darius placed both hands on the roof. You don't have to push me. Whitaker leaned close, his voice low but hostile. You people always start getting nervous the moment we start asking questions. Darius stared forward. I'm not nervous, I'm cooperating. Whitaker began patting him down aggressively, checking his pockets and waistband. After a moment, he stepped back. Stay right there. Without asking again, Whitaker leaned inside the open driver's door. Darius watched from beside the car. Officer, I told you I don't consent to searches. Whitaker ignored him and continued moving things around inside the vehicle. The street remained quiet. A car passed slowly in the opposite direction. Whitaker suddenly reached toward his belt area for a brief second before leaning deeper into the car near the driver's seat. Darius noticed the movement. What are you doing in there? He asked. Whitaker didn't answer. A few seconds passed. Whitaker's arm moved near the seat cushion, partially hidden from view. Then slowly he backed out of the car. He turned toward Darius with a serious look on his face. Between his fingers was a small plastic bag. Whitaker held it up slightly. Well, looks like I just found something interesting. Officer Grant Whitaker held up the small plastic bag between two fingers as he stepped away from the open driver's door. The clear bag contained several small white tablets. Darius turned his head slightly, trying to see what Whitaker was holding. What is that? He asked. Whitaker gave a cold smile. You're telling me you don't know? Darius frowned. No, I don't. Whitaker walked closer, holding the bag up near Darius's face. Looks like narcotics to me. Darius shook his head immediately. That's not mine. Whitaker's tone hardened. Yeah, they all say that. Darius kept his hands on the roof of the Camry. Officer, I don't even know what that is. I told you there's nothing illegal in my car. Whitaker ignored him and pulled a small radio from his shoulder. Dispatch, I'm going to need a second unit, he said calmly into the microphone. Possible narcotics possession. Darius turned his head again. This is ridiculous, he said. You just went into my car without permission. Whitaker leaned closer. You're in no position to tell me what I can and can't do. Darius took a slow breath. That bag wasn't in my car. Whitaker laughed under his breath. Sure it wasn't. I'm serious, Darius said firmly. That wasn't there. Whitaker's expression turned aggressive again. Turn around. For what? Darius asked. Whitaker grabbed his arm. For possession of narcotics. That's not mine, Darius said. Whitaker spun him around roughly. Hands behind your back. Darius complied slowly. You're making a mistake, he said. Whitaker pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. No, Whitaker replied. The mistake was you thinking you could ride around Tacoma with drugs in your car and nobody would notice. The cuffs snapped tightly around Darius's wrists. Whitaker shoved him forward until his chest pressed against the car. Spread your feet. Darius did as he was told. You planted that, he said. Whitaker leaned closer. You better watch what you're accusing me of. I watched you reach toward your belt before you leaned into my car, Darius said. Whitaker's face hardened. You think anybody's going to believe that? He asked. Darius didn't answer. The flashing lights from the patrol car continued reflecting across the street. About 30 seconds later, headlights appeared at the far end of the road. Another Tacoma police cruiser approached. Whitaker glanced toward it. Perfect timing, he muttered. The second cruiser pulled in behind Whitaker's vehicle and stopped. Officer Trevor Madsen stepped out. Madsen was 29 and had only been on patrol for a few years. Compared to Whitaker, he moved with less confidence, but he walked quickly once he saw Darius already in handcuffs. "What's going on?" Madsen asked. Whitaker held up the plastic bag, pulled him over for drifting lanes, found this under the driver's seat. Madsen looked at the bag briefly, then glanced at Darius. Darius spoke up immediately. "That's not mine," he said. "He went into my car without permission." Whitaker cut him off. "Yeah, he's already trying that line." Madsen shifted slightly. "You read him yet?" Madsen asked. "Not yet," Whitaker replied. Darius looked toward the second officer. "Officer, you need to check his body camera. He planted that." Whitaker turned his head sharply. "You want to keep talking?" Whitaker said. "I'm telling the truth," Darius replied. Whitaker grabbed Darius by the shoulder and pushed him harder against the car. "I said stop talking." Across the street, a small sedan slowed as it passed the scene. Inside that car was 24-year-old Kayla Serrano, a nursing student heading home after finishing a late shift at a nearby clinic. The flashing police lights caught her attention. As she drove past, she noticed the man in handcuffs pressed against the car while two officers stood around him. Kayla slowed slightly. Something about the situation felt tense. Whitaker's voice carried across the street. "You should have thought about this before you started carrying drugs around," he was saying. Darius shook his head. "I didn't carry anything." Whitaker held up the bag again. "Found it under your seat." "That's impossible," Darius said. "You put it there." Whitaker stepped closer, his voice turning threatening. "You keep saying that, it's only going to make things worse for you." Kayla had now pulled her car into a nearby parking lot across the street. She watched the scene for a moment. Then she quietly reached for her phone. Back at the traffic stop, Madsen looked toward Whitaker. "You want to search the rest of the car?" he asked. Whitaker nodded. "Oh, we're definitely going to do that." Darius lifted his head slightly. "You're searching it again?" Whitaker smirked. "Now that we've got probable cause, I can search whatever I want." He turned to Madsen. "Start with the back seat." Madsen walked toward the passenger side of the Camry. Meanwhile, Kayla stepped out of her car across the street. She raised her phone slightly and began recording. The distance was far enough that the officers hadn't noticed. Whitaker walked back toward the driver's side and leaned into the car again, continuing to move things around. Darius stood in handcuffs beside the vehicle, watching everything. "You know that camera is recording, right?" Whitaker glanced toward the body camera attached to his chest. "Yeah," he replied. "Good," Darius said. Whitaker smirked slightly. "That footage is going to look real clear when it shows me pulling drugs out of your car." Darius stared at him. "You're not as careful as you think you are." Whitaker's expression tightened slightly. Then Madsen suddenly spoke from the other side of the car. "Whitaker," Whitaker asked. "What?" Madsen stood holding something in his hand. "You might want to look at this." Whitaker walked around the back of the Camry. "What is it?" he asked. Madsen held up a small dash camera mounted near the windshield. "This thing's been recording the whole time." Officer Trevor Madsen held the small dash camera in his hand, the wire still connected to the windshield mount inside Darius Holloway's car. Officer Grant Whitaker stared at it for a moment. "What?" Whitaker said. Madsen pointed toward the camera. "It's powered on," he said. "There's a recording light." Whitaker stepped closer and grabbed the device from Madsen's hand. He turned it over, looking at the small blinking red indicator. Darius was still standing in handcuffs beside the Camry. "You see," he said calmly, "I told you." Whitaker shot him a sharp look. "Keep your mouth shut." Darius didn't respond. Whitaker examined the dash camera again. It was mounted just beneath the rear-view mirror, angled toward the driver's seat and the dashboard. Madsen spoke quietly. "That camera probably recorded the whole stop." Whitaker's jaw tightened slightly. He looked toward Darius. "You installed that recently?" Whitaker asked. "It's been there for months," Darius replied. Whitaker stared at the camera again before handing it back to Madsen. "Doesn't matter. Bag was still under the seat." Darius shook his head. "You know that's not true." Whitaker stepped toward him again. "You really want to keep arguing?" Darius kept his voice steady. "I want the truth." Whitaker leaned close. "You're already under arrest. talking isn't going to help you. Across the street, Kayla Serrano continued filming with her phone. From her position near the parking lot, she could clearly see the man in handcuffs and the two officers standing around his car. She slowly zoomed the camera in. Whitaker's voice carried across the road. "You were real confident a few minutes ago. Now suddenly you've got a camera," Whitaker said to Darius. Darius didn't raise his voice. "I didn't suddenly get one. It's always been there." Whitaker turned back toward Madsen. "Finish searching the car," he said. Madsen nodded and leaned into the back seat area, checking under the seats and inside the center console. Whitaker stepped away toward his patrol cruiser. Darius watched him. "You know that video is going to show everything." Whitaker stopped walking. For a moment he didn't turn around. Then he slowly looked back. "You really think that little camera is going to save you?" Darius answered calmly. "If it recorded what I saw, yes." Whitaker stared at him for several seconds before walking the rest of the way to the cruiser. Inside the vehicle, Whitaker opened the passenger door and placed the small plastic bag on the seat. He glanced toward the body camera mounted on his chest. The red recording light was still blinking. Whitaker muttered under his breath before stepping back out of the cruiser. Meanwhile, Madsen closed the back door of the Camry. "Nothing else in the car," he said. Whitaker nodded. "That's fine. One bag is enough." Darius shook his head. "You know that wasn't there." Whitaker ignored him. Instead, he walked over and grabbed Darius by the arm. "Come on." "Where are we going?" Darius asked. "Back of the car." Whitaker guided him toward the patrol cruiser. As they moved, Kayla Serrano kept filming from across the street. Her phone camera captured the moment Whitaker opened the rear door of the cruiser. "Watch your head," Whitaker said flatly. Darius sat inside the back seat. Whitaker closed the door and walked back toward Madsen. "You finish with the dash camera?" Whitaker asked. Madsen held up the device. "Yeah." Whitaker pointed toward his cruiser. "Put it in my car with the evidence." Madsen hesitated. "You sure?" Whitaker looked at him. "Yeah, why?" Madsen glanced briefly toward Darius, sitting in the patrol car. "Just saying, if that camera shows something different." Whitaker cut him off. "It won't." Madsen didn't respond. He walked over to the cruiser and opened the passenger door, placing the dash camera on the seat next to the small plastic bag. Inside the back seat, Darius could see everything through the divider. He spoke loudly enough for both officers to hear. "You know evidence tampering is a crime too." Whitaker turned around immediately. "Still talking?" Darius leaned forward slightly. "You're digging yourself deeper." Whitaker walked back toward the cruiser and leaned down near the back door window. "You're not in a position to lecture anyone," he said. Darius looked directly at him. "You planted drugs in my car." Whitaker's face hardened. "You keep saying that like it's going to magically become true." Darius remained calm. "Because it is true." Whitaker stared at him for a moment before stepping away again. Back across the street, Kayla lowered her phone briefly. She checked the video she had just recorded. The footage clearly showed Whitaker pushing the man against the car earlier. Kayla raised the phone again and continued filming. She zoomed in further. The camera captured Whitaker and Madsen standing beside the cruiser, speaking quietly. "What's the plan?" Madsen asked. Whitaker crossed his arms. "Same as always," he said. "Write the report?" Whitaker nodded. "Driver was swerving, refused search. I observed suspicious behavior, searched the vehicle, located narcotics." Madsen looked toward Darius, who sat in the patrol car. "And the dash camera?" Whitaker shrugged. "Evidence." Madsen hesitated again. "You're not worried about what's on it?" Whitaker looked at him. Then he gave a short laugh. "Body cam already shows me pulling the bag from under the seat." Madsen didn't answer right away. Whitaker continued. "That's the video that matters." Inside the patrol car, Darius listened carefully. He leaned back against the seat. "You might want to watch that footage again," he said loudly. Whitaker looked toward him. "Why's that?" Darius spoke calmly. "Because when you reached for your belt before leaning into my car..."
Whitaker's expression changed slightly. Darius finished the sentence. Your body cam was already recording.
Darius Holloway sat in the back seat of the patrol car, his hands cuffed behind him, watching Officer Grant Whitaker through the glass divider. Whitaker didn't respond immediately. For a brief moment, the street went quiet except for the flashing lights from the two Tacoma police cruisers reflecting across the pavement. Officer Trevor Madsen shifted slightly beside the cruiser. Whitaker looked at Darius through the window. "You really think that's going to help you?" he asked. Darius leaned back calmly. "It's going to show what actually happened." Whitaker stared at him for another second, then turned away. "Let's wrap this up," he muttered. Madsen nodded and began closing the remaining doors on the Camry after finishing the search. Whitaker walked back to his cruiser and opened the front passenger door where the evidence bag and the dash camera had been placed. He picked up the small plastic bag again and looked at it. Then he glanced at the dash camera sitting beside it. The small red indicator light was still blinking. Whitaker frowned slightly before closing the door. "Tow truck will pick up the vehicle," he said. Madsen looked toward Darius sitting in the patrol car. "You transporting him?" Madsen asked. Whitaker nodded. "Yeah." Within a few minutes, Whitaker climbed into the driver's seat and pulled away from the curb. The cruiser drove several blocks before merging onto a larger road heading toward the Tacoma police precinct. In the back seat, Darius remained quiet. Whitaker glanced briefly at him through the rearview mirror. "You've been real confident this whole time," Whitaker said. Darius looked straight ahead. "Because I know what happened." Whitaker gave a small laugh. "Sure you do." "You planted that," Darius replied. Whitaker shook his head slightly. "You're going to say that in front of a judge?" "Yes." Whitaker looked back at the road. "Good luck with that." About 15 minutes later, the cruiser pulled into the parking lot of the Tacoma police precinct. Whitaker escorted Darius inside the building and processed him through booking. The plastic bag Whitaker claimed to find in the Camry was logged as evidence. The dash camera from Darius's vehicle was also placed into evidence storage. Darius was held overnight on suspicion of narcotics possession. But the situation began changing the next morning. By mid-morning, a video had already started circulating online. Kayla Serrano had uploaded the footage she recorded from across the street. The clip spread quickly across social media. Within hours, it had been viewed thousands of times. Later that afternoon, a Malcolm Tate named arrived at the precinct. Tate had spent more than 20 years handling cases involving police misconduct and wrongful arrests. He met with Darius in a small interview room. "What exactly happened during the stop?" Tate asked. Darius explained everything from the beginning. "The bag wasn't in my car. I watched him reach toward his belt before leaning into the vehicle." Tate nodded slowly. "And you said your car had a dash camera?" "Yes." Tate leaned back in his chair. "Good." That same afternoon, Tate filed a formal request for all available footage from the incident. This included Whitaker's body camera recording. 2 days later, the Tacoma Police Department's Internal Affairs Division began reviewing the footage. The review was led by Captain Lorraine Beckett, a veteran investigator who had spent years examining officer conduct complaints. Beckett watched the body camera video carefully. The footage showed the entire traffic stop from Whitaker's perspective. At first, everything appeared routine. The stop, the questioning, Whitaker ordering Darius out of the car, but then Beckett noticed something. She paused the video, rewound it, and watched again. Just before Whitaker leaned into the car, his hand moved briefly toward his belt. Beckett slowed the footage, frame by frame. The video showed Whitaker's hand moving towards a small object near his belt area. Seconds later, he leaned into the vehicle near the driver's seat. Moments after that, he backed out of the car holding the plastic bag. Beckett sat back in her chair. "Pause it right there," she said. Another investigator leaned forward. "You see that too?" he asked. Beckett nodded. "Yes."
Later that day, she watched the dash camera footage recovered from Darius's car. The camera had been pointed toward the driver's seat the entire time. From that angle, Whitaker's arm could clearly be seen moving toward the seat cushion, and seconds later, the same plastic bag appeared where nothing had been before. Beckett closed the video file. "That's enough," she said. The following morning, Officer Grant Whitaker was called into an internal affairs interview room. Whitaker walked in confidently. "What's this about?" he asked. Captain Beckett sat across the table with a laptop open. "We're reviewing the arrest you made 2 nights ago," she said. Whitaker turned the laptop screen toward him. "Then maybe you can explain this." She pressed play. Whitaker watched the footage. For the first time since the stop on South Tacoma Way, the confident expression on his face began to disappear. The video showed his hand moving toward his belt, then leaning into the car, then pulling out the plastic bag. Whitaker leaned back slowly in his chair. Beckett paused the video. "You want to try that explanation again?" she asked quietly. Let me know what you think about this case in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Culture Scope for more powerful stories like this.